So what makes a good developer experience? Hi, my name is Dan. So I'm going to tell you the story of DarkMode, which is a web series and a documentary we created. So first of all, my name is Dan Leshem. I'm a software engineer and entrepreneur. And last year, I became obsessed with developer experience. I had so many questions like what makes us motivated at work? What makes us productive? So I wanted to dig into this topic, and I took a break, and I worked on something which is entirely different and new for me. And together with a group of friends, we created DarkMode, which is a web series and a documentary about developer experience and the engineering culture in Israel. So for the last 6 months, we visited 8 companies, and we had 60 hours of interviews with 28 exceptional engineers in the ecosystem, asking them what makes or breaks the developer experience. When we say developer experience, what makes it? And we then distilled those interviews into 81 factors that impact the developer experience. These are, if you want, the 81 blockers that are keeping you and your team from running. So I hope to share with you a glimpse to what we learned in those 60 hours of interviews. So let's start with the first thing, the why. This is from the behind the scenes, the 81 factors. But let's start from the beginning. Why even talk about developer experience? We asked our companies, why do you invest so much in developer experience? And they have teams and working on this so much. Why do you even invest? And of course, we received a lot of good reasons. For example, good developer experience is good for velocity, it's good for, you have a feedback loop, a fast feedback loop, so the product is at higher quality. And these are all very good reasons to invest in developer experience. But the answer that most resonates with us was that at the end of the day, developer experience is simply a retention tool. A retention tool. If you can provide your developers, your team, with a comfortable environment, you're just giving them a reason to stay a little bit longer in your company. And in software teams, we would argue that retention is the most impactful thing on efficiency. So lesson number 1 was that a happy developer is good for business. But there are obstacles that stand between us and the perfect developer experience. For example, the tools. And the tools are really the core of developer experience, right? We love our dev tools. They're supposed to help us move faster. They're supposed to help us remove friction from our work. But we learned about this paradox where if you have too few tools and you move slowly. On the other hand, you have too many tools, and then you end up with a fragmented tech stack, which is a productivity killer. It adds complexity, so it's a delicate balance that we must manage when it comes to our tools. Otherwise, it adds complexity, and complexity brings coupling, and coupling is the villain of developer experience. This is, we heard this so many times in our conversations with our engineers, all sorts of coupling. I'm talking about coupling between different teams. I'm talking about coupling between technologies, between tools, between 2 members of the same team. There is nothing more frustrating than having to coordinate your work with other team members. This creates frustration, and we see that performing companies proactively identify this coupling and work to remove it. Speaking of frustration, we learned that many of the developer experience issues at the end of the day boil down to the question, how do I do that? How do I run this script? How do I do this one? And all of those questions are all about knowledge sharing and knowledge management in the team. And we had many questions, and we asked many questions of developers, and nobody, they couldn't agree on every single topic. After all, you know what they say, it's 2 developers in the room, 3 opinions. So we asked our developers on knowledge management, and this was the only consensus, that knowledge management in software team is still it's still a challenge yet to be solved. One thing that was interesting for us, though, is that companies with modern approach to knowledge management prefer automation over documentation. Because at the end of the day, a script spinning up your dev environment is a good enough substitute for a documentation article on how to spin up your dev environment. So that was a nice and interesting approach, refreshing approach on knowledge management in what we think good developer experience teams. Overall, the thing with developer experience is that there is no single challenge. When it comes to developer experience, there are so many challenges that needs to be solved. Speaking of the DevOps language, it's not a stateless environment. You have to, it depends on so many things. It depends on the team size, on the team's mission, on the company stage. So many things can hinder the developer experience. So this is why we think that continuous feedback and continuous improvement in developer experience, if you ask your developers what frustrates them, we think this is the key to solve and start improving the developer experience. And we saw companies with a modern approach to developer experience, how they continuously ask developers and identify and pinpoint the friction in their day-to-day lives, and then they act to remove it. So this is it. It was short, and thank you all. We are live on YouTube next Sunday, so stay tuned. Thank you very much.